Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Hello. Rebecca Magic here. So let's see who tunes in for this video, which I'm going to talk about this week's Torah portion. It's called Chayei. So I just came from Torah study, actually, at the synagogue in Sedona, Arizona, and it's really beautiful. And I go to Torah study every week, and then what I do afterward is I just kind of go deeper. I go as deep as I can possibly go at that present time. And every year, I assume I'll go even deeper. But there definitely comes a point where I'm like, all right, that's enough. So I'm at that point right now. I've taken my notes, I've processed a little bit, and now I wanted to do some video journaling with you guys and see if you have anything to share or if anything piques your interest here too, because this is relevant to all of us. We're all a part of this story. We all are part of the same one story, the creation story, and it is ever unfolding for an eternity. So there is relevance for each of us every week when we read the Torah portion. So I want to start off by talking about a main point of this Parsha or Torah portion, which is that the older we get, the harder we have to work. And we have to be really careful when we're perceiving what is really behind these words. You know, this is a very specific statement. And in fact, last night I made a video when I was sitting by the Shabbat candles, if any of you happened to see it. And I don't know, I hadn't known why this topic came over me, but now it's making sense to me. I was talking a bit about how when we're kids, we seem so healthy and it's so easy to just be vibrant and energetic and adventurous. And as we get older, it's almost like we need to work harder to maintain those things, that, you know, that spirit of vitality and good health and eagerness and high energy. So why is that? What is the difference from when we're children to when we get older? Well, as children, we're so excited to be in these bodies, to be experiencing this sensory experience called life. We're so naturally in that vibration of gratitude, actively so, being in these bodies. And so as children, we're natural expressions of the gratitude for our health and vitality, and so we receive more of it. And as we get older, we still can embody that sort of vitality and that energetic spirit. But it takes a different kind of an effort. It actually takes an effort, whereas for kids it comes naturally. So as we get older, we need to actually go out of our way to give thanks for our health and to remember it and acknowledge it, because we've got so many other things going on at that point in our age, in our reality, that it requires that extra effort. And so I found it interesting that was a major point of this week's Torah story. I just thought, I don't know why the heck this is coming to my mind, and whatever, however random it is, I still think that, you know, it's enlightening. I still think it's a great point. And so I made the video and I shared it on my YouTube channel for anyone who wants to check it out. But now I'm seeing really why it is relevant right now. Okay. So Abraham was promised children and a land. God made this grand promise to Abraham, and he made it more than once. And so it's almost like you would expect that he would just be given things. He would just be given this land and given the children. But God didn't say how that was going to unfold. And the promise was certainly kept, but he had to act, because God gives us responsibility. And only by exercising it do we reach our fullest potential. So yes, God did keep his promise. And, you know, Abraham did receive that land, or, you know, still on that mission to establish that land in a whole new way, of course. But, you know, he also does have many descendants, and, you know, we are all called the children of Abraham, all faiths, you know, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And so that promise was certainly kept, but he had to work for it. And as he gets older in the stories of the Torah, we see that he actually has to work harder in certain ways. It's like, dude, you're 137 and you just lost your wife, and now you're leaving on this journey to buy this land to bury her. You're 137, you know, and the point, you know, there's a very specific point to all of these numbers. It goes very deep, but on one level we can see that it's obviously being dramatized for a reason. The Torah is trying to paint a picture for us, saying that doesn't matter how old we get, we need to maintain that active spirit. It's very important that we maintain, our obedience or service to the One. Always, no matter what. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But action is absolutely necessary, and Abraham reflected that. God doesn't just hand us things, or life would not be what it is. It's not what God does for us, but what we do for God. I really liked this quote that I learned today. It's not what God does for us, but what we do for God. Of course, there are infinite blessings to be grateful for from God. If we really tried to count all of them, you'd be counting for an eternity, because there are more and more blessings always being born, being multiplied. And so it really absolutely is about what we do for God. What are we giving back for all that God has given us? A true leader will exercise his or her responsibility to create the conditions through which God's purposes can be fulfilled. So yeah, we can sit there and just thank God all day, but eventually God would come to us in one form or another and let us know. Okay, now get up and do something. You got to act. This life would not be what it is if we were handed everything. That is the point. We must act. What are we going to give back? What are we going to do? You follow me? Who's with me? Give a little sign that you're there. I see a few people are watching. Thanks for being here. A major theme of this week's Torah story is to remain active, not passive, even in old age. Like I was just saying about Abraham. 137, yet still not just like moving, but moving. He's got an enlivened spirit. He's got this enlivened spirit, and that's really important for so many reasons. Metaphysically speaking, let's see, I wrote a little something about this. Though action takes energy, it gives us energy as well. I read this quote today. Though action takes energy, because when we act, we're giving energy, so it's taking it from us, okay? So though action takes energy, it also gives us energy. But I went a little deeper with this, and I started writing about it, and I saw that if the action is righteous, or the Hebrew word lishma, for the sake of the Creator, then we receive that energy back. So if we're using our energy, not for the sake of the Creator, not for the greatest good, we will feel drained. But it's true that no matter what age or whatever condition we're in, if we give for the sake of the Creator, if we bestow to simply bestow to the Creator without any expectation of receiving in return, if we do that, then just as we give, we are simultaneously multiplying the energy and bringing it right back to the self, because we're all one. But this can only be done if when we're using that energy, it's for the highest good. Because what that does is it sends that energy straight back to the source of which you and I and all of us are a part. And it magnifies it and it reflects that back to us. But it's not true that if we use our energy out of alignment with nature and not for the greatest good, that we'll receive it back. You won't. That is ultimately not going to multiply our energies. It kind of just keeps us at a level playing field, if you ask me, because I believe that true work is never lost. So it's not like something negative could ever really happen, because all that is not in the light of perfection of Creator fades away. So there's nothing to worry about, but it's like either, sit there forever and pick your nose, or take action, take responsibility, and exercise that gift of responsibility so that we can multiply our blessings for an eternity. That was the truth of what God was saying to Abraham when he said, I'm going to give you children, I'm going to give you this land. It was much more than just a piece of land and some kids. No, it's much bigger than that. And we're going to talk more about that in a second too. So Rebecca, reflects Abraham's eagerness and quickness. What is that eagerness and quickness? It's actually mentioned a few times in this story, and it's mentioned throughout the Torah, that these leaders or matriarchs and patriarchs have this quickness to them, this eagerness to serve. And what is that? Why is that mentioned over and over? It is to highlight the power of passion in Hasidim. Hasidim is acts of loving kindness. If there's no passion behind it, then what is really the vibration of the act? if we really wish for the chasadim, the acts of loving kindness, to do the most for the one and for the world and for all of us, then we must give it that soul. Otherwise, it's not going to do anything. It has to have the soul in it. It has to have that passion. And so when in the Torah it's explained that these matriarchs or patriarchs or servants of the Lord or the One did it with quickness and eagerness and excitement, ran to do the work. What that's really saying is that they were happy to do it. They were excited. They knew that they were fulfilling their purpose, that it was important, that it was so significant. It was for the One. So it was priority. This is like the core truth of the religion being, a religion of monotheism. Straight to the One. Let's, rush to serve. Not in a negative way, but like it's exciting. It's an eagerness to do good for the One. Even in the name Israel, Israel means to go straight to the One. And so this quality of eagerness is seen in the leading foremothers and forefathers of all of our story. So, what do we have next? Okay. After Sarah's death, who was Abraham's wife, Abraham actually remarries. Again, he's 137 years old, okay? But there's a purpose to the dramatization of the story. So after Sarah's death, Abraham remarries and has 8 more children. That is another reflection of what we just spoke about how when you give energy, you receive energy right back, especially when it's for the highest good. He just kept multiplying. Literally, like his blessings were multiplying. Even in his old age. There is a metaphysical understanding behind that dramatization. Okay, so Eliezer was Abraham's servant. Eliezer is also an angel or a messenger. He was Abraham's servant, and he's called the Hebrew word servant in the story, in the Bible, in the Torah. And Abraham says to him, "Go out of here and go back to my homeland to find a wife for my son." Basically implying that he wants to keep the family together. He wants to continue the family name. And he says to Eliezer, "Go now." And Eliezer says, "Well, what if I can't bring a woman back with me? What if I find her and then she doesn't want to come with me?" And he says, "Well, so be it. If she doesn't want to, it's not meant to be. And then what will happen is you, being my loyal servant, will be my heir, and it won't be my son." And so you would think that Eliezer or, a servant would say, "Well, obviously, I'm not going to try very hard then to make this mission happen, because I want to be the heir, and I want to inherit all the riches and all the goodness and all of the positive things that he knows he would inherit, because Abraham is the spiritual father. He is so blessed, and you would think that his servant would want to inherit that. But that's not what happens at all. In fact, the opposite happens. He goes and he does his best, and he is a representation of that loyalty and that respect, and he goes and he carries out the mission. And so how does that actually happen? When he's sitting at the well of water. So whenever you see a well, whenever you read about a well in the Torah or the Bible, it's always representing a place of love, a meeting place for love to unfold. And there are many ways we can look at that. One way I see it is that the well contains water, which is emotion. Water is emotions. Water is the heart. Just like the suit of cups in the Torah, it's emotions. Water, emotions, heart. And so Eliezer goes to the well to find the woman. He knows that the women are coming out for the day to get the water. And he starts to pray to God. And he says, "God, please give me some luck. I'm going to set up a test, okay?" He says, "God, send me a woman for Isaac who is a good woman, who reflects that chesed, that quality of loving kindness that Abraham contains and represents." He says, "The way I'll know it's her is she'll come and she'll offer me water, and she'll offer water to all of my camels." He had 10 camels. Okay. And the rabbi today told us how she looked up how much water each camel would typically drink after a long journey, and it's about 25 gallons per camel. 10 camels, 25 gallons each. That's not like, it's not a little favor. That's huge. Okay, so Eliezer is praying for this miracle. He's saying, God, I want it to be super clear that this is the one. She's the one. So she's going to come and she's going to offer me water and water to all my camels. Before he can finish even saying the prayer, Rebecca, comes up to Eliezer, offering him water, and she says, let me get water for all of your camels too. And she completes the job. And he's blown away by her kindness and also at the miraculous unfolding, because the words barely left his lips of his prayer. And it was already being answered. So he knew, and he bowed in that moment on the ground. He bowed to God and said his thanks, because he knew that this was a divine happening. And he so graciously received that blessing and ran with it. And he immediately offered Rebecca a golden nose ring, actually. Nose ring. So that's interesting, and there's more to say about that, but it's not really too important right now. But he gave her a golden nose ring and 2 gold bracelets, and then he asked if there was a place to sleep, and she offered him to come to her home, to her family's home, and stay the night. And so he gets there, and he tells Rivka's family all about the situation and why he came out there to find a wife for Isaac, and how Isaac is the son of Avraham, the great Avraham, like the blessed Avraham who will inherit greatness for years to come. And so the family's like, oh my goodness, yeah, like take her, like yes, like, but they weren't saying like just take her. In fact, quite the opposite. They said, yes, this sounds amazing, but we also want it to be up to her. They said to Eliezer, how about we just keep her for a little while longer? How about we keep her for I believe it was 10 months to a year, they said. And he says, no, I have to take her now. Like, please let me fulfill my mission. I have to go back to my master, Avraham. And they say, well, let's let Rivka decide, which is really cool, because we are often, faced with the idea that women are oppressed, or have been for many years, in many different cultures, many different religions, and how they don't have a say. And, there's a lot of this controversy when we talk about arranged marriage and love in religion and things like this. But they specifically, and this is Genesis, we're still in the beginning stories, so these are the stories of the roots of this religion, or our one family human family tree. And so they gave her the respect. They said, Rebecca, what do you want to do? Do you want to go? And she actually said, yes, I want to go right now. Let's get the heck out of here. Because, I mean, come on. It's not just like the riches. Here's some gold, some bracelets, and a nose ring. Do you think that one of our founding mothers would be someone as shallow as that to just say yes to an opportunity for material, possessions or material abundance? No. But she felt the purposefulness of this mission. No doubt. If someone came to you and said such a thing, like, we traveled this far because we knew that our prayer would be answered, and look at these miraculous signs that are proving over and over that you are this one. And she was like, yes, I want that, especially because her family was not exactly a righteous family. They were living in a lot of sin, and she said yes to this calling as a way of saying yes to a higher path, a more virtuous path, one that she knew she wouldn't find sticking around with her family. And so she left with Eliezer to meet her husband, Isaac. She essentially had no idea that she was to become that huge part of God's plan, to be that matriarch. She didn't know from a conscious perspective, but there is some psychological unfolding happening there that the Torah is alluding to, that she felt it in her, that higher purpose. Okay, so she had no idea she was going to become the mother of twins, that one would be named Israel, and that because of that, later she would become the grandmother of the 12 tribes of Israel. That's huge, and she didn't know that, of course. And also, something to consider is that for 3 years before this happened, Sarah had been dead. So for 3 years between Sarah and the marriage of Rivka and Yitzhak, there was no mother. There was no mother. I found this really interesting because something just clicked for me where I thought, wow, that explains the understanding from so many cultures that we are in that time right now of returning to the mother. We're going back to the mother, back to Rivka and that archetype and what she embodies, which will be spoken about in the later stories in the Torah as the weeks go by. And I'm really excited to continue sharing with you guys. But for 3 years, there was no mother, and then Rivka became the mother, and out of that came the 12 tribes of Israel. So it's very powerful. When Rebekah reaches Isaac's land with the camels and with Eliezer, he had just returned from meditation. So Yitzhak, Isaac, was out meditating on the land. He just returned. And that is when she pulls up at that moment. Pulls up on her camel. Okay, what does that symbolize? So that's really specific. They're being really specific with this for a reason. It's like nothing's written in the Torah or the Bible for no reason. It's each and every little mark on those pages has a purpose. And especially if it looks contradictory or looks like a mistake, you can bet it's not. Because first of all, when these Bibles or the Old Testament, the Torah is written, it's overseen by a group of people. There's a system of checks and balances. There is no mistake. That's why I say when it appears to be that it is a mistake, it's absolutely not. And in fact, you should look deeper and more closely. And there's a lot of that. Those are all the fun little esoteric points that become the Kabbalistic commentary, which is mainly my focus. So when Isaac returns from meditation, Rebekah shows up at that time, and it's to symbolize that we can't enter into that holy union. We can't demonstrate that holiest of unions until we are whole on our own. And Isaac is very well known to be this man of spirit, to be an otherworldly man. There are a lot of unique characteristics of Isaac that paint the picture of who he is in relation to the greater story of who we all are. He plays a key role as one of the founding fathers of what we need to embody, and he is the aspect of that otherworldly connection. And so he's very in tune with spirit, and so he's meditating, and he's getting in touch with himself, and then boom, when he reaches that place, there comes his future wife, Rivka. She shows up, ready to be with him and his wholeness. And so when she sees him for the first time, it says she falls off of her camel. But remember, I was just saying there are those little mistakes and funny things that we really need to look at. And so the way of the wording in the Torah that says that she falls off her camel, it's in Hebrew, of course, and it's open to different interpretation. And so you can find different commentaries out there about what really happened. And there are a couple, and the ones that resonated with me, and they're both a little bit different. One is that she fell off because she was like, whoa, who is that holy presence? You know, she could have assumed it was him. Maybe not. But either way, she was blown away by his presence. She literally fell off her camel. But one interpretation I liked and seemed a little more realistic is that she actually purposely got herself off of the camel, that she bowed off of the camel when she saw the strange man in the desert. The strange man on the land. So she's a very intentional being, Rivka, and she also is very modest. And so rabbis will say that she didn't fall off, but she purposely bowed to the side of her camel as a sign of modesty, which is further confirmed in the next sentence where she lifts her veil. Okay, so she puts her veil over her face so that she creates that veil in between her and Isaac. It's also a sign of modesty, and it's also a sign of respect and reverence. And this is seen in Jewish weddings, that Jewish brides to this day, and brides of other faiths who, ultimately we all stem from one, they'll use the veil. And this is, you can even see this further ritualized in the way that brides and grooms don't see each other until after the marriage, or at the marriage. And so all this is really interesting. This all originates from the story of Rivka, the whole veil at the wedding. Because Rebecca, is the archetype that is spoken about in reference to marriage and mating, matchmaking, tying knots, binding, not necessarily husband and wife, but the name Rebecca literally means to bind. So it's the light and the dark, the higher and the lower, the two into the one. And so it's very interesting to see now that whole idea of the wedding veil, to see that in a new light and to see that in reflection of the story of Rivka. It's really opening doors for me here. I don't know about you guys. Feel free to share any, feel free to share anything with me, anything that resonates with you. How does it resonate with you? Is there anything you want to expand on? I'm really interested to go as deep as possible with this, so please feel free to share. Okay, so she falls off the camel when she sees him. She puts her veil on. And I think what it does is not necessarily, it's not like a sign of like, oh my God, I need to like shade myself away from him, but it's a sign of showing him respect. Like when we're out in the world, I am modest. I'm a modest woman. Like if this is ever lifted, may it be in our private presence together. She's showing him that she's a woman of respect, that she respects others and that she deserves to be respected as well. So there's a lot going on in the symbolism of what that veil represents. Well, and to go even deeper, something I really liked learning about the veil was Rebecca is the first woman in relationship in the Torah to she's the first woman to have her voice kind of inhibited. Like she goes inward rather than feeling comfortable to express herself all the time. Sarah was more expressive and she was an equal to her husband. Rebecca is the first woman who kind of retracts and goes into herself and doesn't share everything. And there's a point to that. And that veil reflects that separation, that one of the first veils between husband and wife or woman and man. And the story goes deeper into why that is. Why is she the first woman to not speak up? The story eventually reveals, which will probably be, I guess, in a few weeks from now, when she has the twin sons, and I don't know if you guys know this, but she ends up having the twin boys. And Isaac, her husband, wishes to bless the wrong one, and she knows in her heart that he's not going to bless the right son to be his heir. And ultimately, rather than trying to persuade him, she lies to him, and she tricks him by having the rightful son dress up as the other to receive the blessing. But there's a lot of symbolism going on in there, and what that is reflecting is her understanding of doing righteous acts, sometimes in anonymity. Sometimes we have to do the right thing anonymously. We have to make other people think that it's their idea or whatever. What it's symbolizing more deeply is that we know that there's something that needs to be done. And whatever we need to do to get that done, we will do it. And sometimes that looks like it's deceit or lying or, but what's happening on a deeper level is so profound. And so it's really hard to judge somebody as a liar, or that's where things start to get really tricky. So you can really see how it's reflecting psychology and the psychology behind the way that we relate to each other in this world, and as husband and wife, and as individual to individual, brother to brother, whatever you want to call it. And so Rivka, while showing that she lied, it's also showing that she knew she needed to do what she needed to do for the one. And so something I want to say is that she's not just Isaac's wife, but she's a matriarch. And when they marry, it's not just an initiation into their marriage. It's an initiation of Rebecca into being a matriarch. And that is something very powerful. That's something very powerful. It means that they don't just have a purpose together as husband and wife, but they also have their own individual purpose as mother and father of Israel, as mother and father of the united worlds, the one world of heaven on earth. They are these, the founding mother and father, and they have their own missions within their mission as one unit. And so she choosing to deceive her husband for the greatest good was actually noble of her and was respected by God. And so she is a respected figure in God's eyes. because she did what she needed to do. Even though he was her husband, she knew that he was wrong and he was blessing the wrong child, and she did what she needed to do for the one, for all of us. So it goes really deep. I love it. I could probably talk about this forever. I could every week when I do this and I reflect on the Torah Parsha, it could go so deep, and I'm so excited that I can do that for the rest of my life, that every year I'll have the opportunity to revisit these stories in a whole new way. So, let's continue on. So Genesis may seem like an intense love story between the foremothers and forefathers, them and their children, and each of them and God, right? It seems like this whole like messy love story, like so much going on. It's about this person's love with this person, and then wait, but then this person, and then it brings in like this whole idea of incest, and the family tree is beginning. So things are going to be a little weird there at the roots of our story, right? And it does seem like this grand love story, but what it's really revealing is the model of family ritual as an active, prayerful expression. Okay, what it presents is the ideal family model. Why does this family model reflect that ideality? Because it helps to solidify faith, to establish a covenant, and give birth to the future. These are all the most important things. So we can use this family model, which is reflected in our original stories of Genesis, to establish our own, so that we can create this unit where we can practice with each other, to deepen our faith, to solidify our faith, to practice establishing covenants with each other, to make sacred promises and then carry them out, just like God did with Abraham, or God did with Noah, just like all of the original stories. By having a family and practicing these things, we are doing a mitzvah or a good deed. We are living, we're living out God's will and our own as one, and bringing in the highest pleasure and the most abundance for the highest good of one and all. So family ritual is really, really important for this reason. I'm really learning a lot about this right now, and it's really exciting. So I'm looking forward to sharing more about why we are in relationship and why we choose to have children. What is the purpose in having a family? So definitely stay tuned if you're interested in hearing more about that. So he brought her into the tent. Isaac brought Rebekah into the tent, it says. It says it in 3 parts. He brought her into the tent, he married her, and he loved her. First, he brings her into the tent. Why does he bring her into the tent before he marries her? What does the tent symbolize? If you're reading the Hebrew, there are all sorts of hidden keys there. And basically, to summarize it, that tent is symbolizing like a dwelling. Also, a house or a temple. These are all seen in one letter. The second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is Bet. Bet is Bait, house or dwelling. And it always, what is it all for? What is anything ever for? It's for the one. So therefore we look at each symbol related to each letter of the Hebrew alphabet in relation to God, or the one. And so if it's a house or a dwelling place, it's a house or a dwelling place for God, for light, because it's all for light. That's why we're here. It's for the sake of the Creator. So this tent then symbolizes something very special, especially because it's a tent that we're talking about right there in Genesis. Obviously it has a very holy purpose. And so the tent is symbolizing the structure which will be the foundation for Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael, to put it in a way that's relatable for everybody, is a place on this earth that is a manifestation of our collective efforts to unite our souls with our bodies individually, and to unite our soul with our body collectively as one unit. So when we do that, when we unite the worlds within ourselves and all around us, we will manifest this Am Yisrael, this world built of truth. And so that tent is a representation of that's the foundation. And so Sarah was in that tent previously, and her essence was in there, and she passed away, and then Rebekah enters the tent. And Rebekah would be her daughter-in-law. So Rebekah enters the tent. And what happens when she enters the tent? And this is before he marries her. She has to enter the tent before he marries her. She enters the tent, and all of a sudden, all of these miracles that were unfolding for Sarah before she died started happening again immediately upon Rebekah's entering the tent. So a cloud appeared above the tent, symbolizing the presence of holiness. There was a holy guiding presence there, once again. The bread rose up, the challah bread rose. The challah was especially blessed, just like when the Jews left Egypt and the matzah, the unleavened bread, all this. You could see this throughout the Torah. But there's a reason that there are certain, I'm going to say 3 of them, there are certain blessings that are considered the holiest of blessings. And one of them is that cloud, signifying a holy presence watching over them. Another is that bread rising, symbolizing a miracle, the bread rising. And again, Sarah had that blessing of the challah, and all of a sudden Rebekah was receiving it too. Like, wow, look at my bread, it's doing something really special. And then the other was that her candles would burn for 7 nights, not just one on Shabbat, but they would burn for 7. And Sarah had this blessing, and then all of a sudden Rebekah does too. So Avraham is, not Avraham. Well, Avraham is also witnessing this, but he's not much in the story, and that's another esoteric conversation I could have for an hour. But his son, Isaac, is witnessing Rebekah in the tent and all of the blessings that all of a sudden are appearing. These miracles that are happening that were signs of his mother's continuance. So Rebekah comes after Sarah's death, but she's continuing the legacy. Because Isaac didn't just find a woman like his mom, which, let's be real, we all will try to find those qualities, the positive traits of the mother or father in our lover. But it's much bigger than that. It's not just like, oh, I found a woman who's like my mother, yay, like I'm such a mama's boy. Like, no, it's much deeper than that. Not only does he find that, he also finds someone who embodies the potential to fulfill the mission of reaching Am Yisrael. She is divinely worthy of continuing in his mother's footsteps. And he knows that his mother isn't just his mother. She is the mother of us all. She is the first mother. She's Sarah. She's the founding mother of all of us in our human family tree. And so he immediately, upon her entering the tent, receives the clarity and the guidance that he needs to know that she's the one. She's the one. So first, she enters the tent, right? Then he marries her. And when he marries her, again, it's not just an initiation into their marriage. It's an initiation of Rebekah, into the foundation of the building of Am Yisrael as a matriarch and as a huge part of God's plan. And then the last part, of course, he loves her. And the reason why that's added in there after he marries her, and it's, behind the lines sort of understood that he knows consciously he's not only marrying her to just marry her and make her his wife, but he knows consciously that he is, by marrying her, he is initiating her into that motherhood, which is very powerful. But then, like I said, it goes on to say, and he loved her, because the Torah wanted to specify that it wasn't devoid of romance, that he did absolutely love her, and the romance made it stronger and bonded this whole experience more deeply, because life is love, and none of this would be as powerful as it is then and now if it wasn't for the love that was within it all along. So another thing is Sarah is known as the resting place of Shekinah, which is Kundalini. And so when Sarah dies, that tent for 3 years is said to be empty. And then when Rebekah enters and continues her blessings and continues in the path of Sarah, she becomes the new resting place of the Shekinah of the world, of the light of the world. And you can see it almost as like a light in her womb, right? Because the Shekinah, it's like the light of the mother. So, one really beautiful thing that I took from all of this is that, wow, like Isaac not only found a loving mate, but also found somebody who would fulfill the role of matriarch for Am Yisrael. So it was a lishma marriage. It was a marriage for the sake of the Creator. That's what made it the best, most meaningful marriage, most fulfilling marriage, because they were fulfilling their soul purpose individually and together. This is why Rivka is the face of marriage, still to this day. All of the symbolism behind marriage is really about the divine marriage between, the soul and the body and the man and God. And Rivka represents that matrimony and that union. And the worker to put in effort to make that happen. Because love takes effort. Life takes effort. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It is a beautiful thing. And she's seen as one who is eager to do it. You remember, I said it, and the rabbi told me, 25 gallons of water per camel. There were 10 camels. 10 camels. She got water for all those camels, not just for Eliezer, but for him and all of his camels. So the point is, we have to work for it, of course. But when the work is all for the unification of those worlds, it's more than worth it. It's immediately fulfilling. Immediately brings miracles, immediately brings more love into our lives, immediately brings more life and vitality into our being. So, I know that's a lot, but I feel really good to get that out and to complete it. And I'm going to be saving all of these videos from now on, and I'm going to be catching you guys up, because this is the first time I actually did a full review on video. I usually just do a little, I pick a topic, or I just kind of keep it short. But I'm going to catch you guys up on the last few weeks here. So stay tuned if you enjoyed this. And thanks for letting me process that. And really, it's a never-ending process. I'm really excited about this story, particularly because it's also obviously my name. And so I learn a lot about myself, as we all learn a lot about ourselves when we study these works. But this was really near and dear to me because it is my name. And I am really feeling my purpose and going deeper with my self-reflection. And last week, before this week's Torah story of Rivka, I actually went up with a couple of women and said the blessing for the taking out of the Torah and the putting back of the Torah. And then I had no idea that next week's Torah portion, which is today, would be about Rebecca. So that was really interesting that I gave the blessing, and then the next story was about my name. I went to synagogue last night for the service to hear the story, and I had no idea what I was walking into, because I pull up to the parking lot and it's packed out. I get inside, it's packed out. We usually just have a very small group, but this was something was going on. And I asked, what's going on? And I found out very quickly that we had sent out a national invitation for all to attend our service. And so members of this community showed up, and there were all these familiar faces. We had to open up the room divider. We had to bring in all these chairs, and it was so powerful. And in case you're wondering why we did that, it's because of the synagogue shooting that happened in Pittsburgh last week. So we invited community in so that we can come together. And I just thought, wow, how powerful for the first, my first attendance of the story of my name in synagogue. And it's this huge event. And all these people coming together, which is a reflection of the name of Rebecca. My very name is about coming together and binding, unifying. And also it's very Aquarian, which is about community, the 11th house. It's about bringing the people together, brotherhood of man. So I thought that was extra special. And there were a few other really magical unfoldings around this that I feel very blessed for. And all day yesterday I was singing one specific prayer. All day at work before synagogue. And little did I know that the words were actually saying, talking about coming together, everybody coming together. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. So coming all together, all of us coming together as one. So I'm just singing that all day, and then I have this extra magical service last night. There's so much magic, you guys. Especially in here. That's where it all sources from. And then, when you tap into that, the magic is all around you. It always was. You just have to see it, and that's how you do it, by tapping in, by tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Shabbat shalom, and have an awesome rest of your week. Shalom.